Sports professor Rick Horrow, Beyond the Scoreboard, the show we go inside the trillion-dollar business of sports, marketing, legal, political, administrative, and the like. A big week in sports. The NFL preseason mercifully ends for most. College football season beginning for all. U.S. Open tennis beginning as well. A significant money raiser for the USTA and otherwise. Today, though, a special day to kind of look back at the career of John McCain and paying special tribute to him with an interview we have in our archives from a year ago at the Phoenix International Raceway, where he talks about sports, politics, and the power of the human spirit, obviously, as only he could. If you want to get full interview, plus all of the 15 topics and the 5 philanthropic and the 5 tech, CSN, NBC, Washington, the NBC Digital Network, get it on at Rick Horrow, horrorsports.com. And while you're at it, subscribe to us on Audio Play, Google, and all of the places you would normally find us. Before we get into the normal week's events, let's talk about John McCain, incredible human being, a sports person because he inspired a whole generation and multi-generations. We caught up with him last year at the Phoenix International Raceway in his home state as an Arizona senator. He sat down with us at some length talking about his Korean experience, some politics, but mostly the power of sports. The great John McCain. Senator McCain, it is truly an honor. Thank you very much for spending time with us.
Thank you.
Broadly defined, sports, entertainment as big business. There are federal policy implications, tax exemptions, remove them or not for facilities, public-private partnership, federal issues, relocation. A lot of specifics, but broadly defined, how do you view sports in this context?
Well, I view sports in this context, in the context of the Sherman Antitrust Act. In other words, they're able to have exclusive franchises in different locales in this country, and maybe even overseas over time. And that's understandable and reasonable. But that gives them a degree of immunity, but it also then does bring in the federal government into their business. Now, if they were not receiving the Sherman Antitrust Act protections and tax dollars to fund their expansions or stadiums, etc., then I, as a United States Senator, would not be involved in any way. But when they take a taxpayers funded facility and decide that they're going to black out the area because they haven't sold out the stadium, then that's when I step in and say, no, you're not going to deprive the people of your locality, which you have the exclusive right to, from seeing a game just because you didn't make enough money. And so that's when one of my causes, and I'm sure it's made me very unpopular with some of the owners. In fact, I know it has been. But look, it is part of America. The Major League Sports is an integral part of America. I will never forget, as long as I live, years ago when I was in a Vietnamese prison camp and I got some new prisoners in, the first thing we wanted to know is who won the Super Bowl. That was the first question that we asked these new guys. So it is, but with that kind of role that professional sports plays, they also have some obligations.
And we've talked off camera about owners taking another step, Steve Ross and his initiative to end racism. It doesn't end it, but it certainly speaks to the obligations of owners, teams, leagues to be socially responsible in the broader context, correct?
And that's why it was so disturbing a couple of months ago when we found out that the Department of Defense was paying money for so-called patriotic events, honoring the men and women who were serving, flags, etc. And I want to make it clear, there's a difference between, for example, here at NASCAR, the National Guard sponsors a car, pays for it, that's fine. That's a recruiting tool. But that's far different from saying we're honoring all of our veterans at halftime and here's the flag and aren't we great, we the franchise, aren't we wonderful, we're honoring when they're actually getting money for it. That was a bit of a black eye, especially for the NFL.
Leagues clearly take you seriously. They've taken you seriously for a number of years, and so there will be some technical adjustments as a consequence of what you've done. But again, in the broader social context, there's no better way to show patriotism than attend a NASCAR or sporting event, I assume.
No, and NASCAR is especially good at that, particularly given the average, if you look at it, middle-income, patriotic American that loves NASCAR. And by the way, I think that our major franchise owners do great things. They do a lot of wonderful things in the community. We have example after example of the outreach of efforts to help address community issues, whether it be education or whether it be hospitals and places. And a lot of the athletes are wonderful, don't get me wrong. But from time to time, we have to make sure that they're doing the right thing.
And you certainly have the ability and experience and leverage to make sure they're doing the right thing. Let's segue.
Could I mention one other thing?
Go ahead.
I did receive a letter from the commissioner. This pay for patriotism is over. They will not allow that to happen again, and I'm very happy to know that.
And that took 3 hours, 5 hours after your press conference?
Not long.
Not long. There's the leverage comment. Let's segue into sports as economic development, if you don't mind. We're here at PIR, the Quicken Loans Heroes 500 happening. And the other issue of announcing a IndyCar race here. So there are 3 Super Bowl dimensioned economic impact weekends on a calendar year. In this context, you acknowledge and support the idea of sports as big business development.
Sports is not only big business. There's a certain prestige associated with having the 4 major professional sports here, franchises here. NASCAR, it isn't probably, we all agree that Daytona is probably the biggest NASCAR event, but PIR has become really very up there, and they're going to invest quite a bit of money to upgrade the facility here. And this, we have the Super Bowl sometimes, we have college playoffs, we have all kinds of great things here. But you know what the number one in attendance is every year? PIR. And people, it was interesting driving in today, it's sold out. There are people now scalping tickets. That shows the popularity that this sport has in this part of the country.
And nationally and internationally as well. So, and corporately, awareness from the kind of narrow perspective of the Valley, when you mention PIR, Avondale, Phoenix, thousands of times, it gets noticed by corporate world, but also by the world, the business world at large.
It gets recognized by the business world, but it's also, frankly, a source of pride for those of us that live in the Valley and in the state. It's nice to see the Arizona Cardinals, the Phoenix Coyotes, the Arizona Diamondbacks, and PIR is if you sheer numbers, that's bigger than any of those single events. So we're very pleased to have PIR here in the Valley. It's been here a long time, and there's commitments to upgrade the facility here too as well.
Speaking of facility upgrades, and we're not going to micromanage it, but the whole idea of the political and public-private aspect of this. Mayors, political leaders always tell me that the easiest thing to understand but the hardest to quantify is the intangible spirit of bringing a team, having a team win, having a team succeed. How do you analyze that?
First of all, let me say in full disclosure, I would not like to see a single dime of taxpayers' dollars used to build any of these facilities. I just maybe a tax write-off, but it is what it is. They have the exclusive franchise in the area, and they can always move. That's their right to do so. So we see taxpayer-financed stadiums. And what do you think is going to happen out in Los Angeles here? We know it's inevitable. There's going to be at least one NFL franchise out there. I don't like it, but it is what it is. And to counterbalance that, it's a great source of pride to me to be in a state which is not a very large state, where so many people come, where so many events are held because they love the venue. Now the weather has something to do with that, but there's a lot of other places with good weather, and yet in Phoenix we get much more than our share, whether it be in college playoffs or whether it be a number of the other NBA. We're going to have the college NCAA championship here in Phoenix as well. So I'm proud, and it gives our citizens a great sense of pride that it's happening here, even if your mother-in-law comes to visit while that event is taking place.
Gives the mother-in-law something to do and the person that's being visited something to do. Just one follow-up on that question, if you don't mind. The whole idea of public-private partnerships, you said maybe tax write-offs. We won't micromanage that either, but we know that there's been about $17 billion of public money spent over the last 20 years in a lot of different contexts. Infrastructure, for example, tax credits, increment dollars. So it's not an absolute prohibition. As you said, it is what it is. It's a technique. How do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about, for example, the one thing we need in America right now is an upgrade of our highways, bridges, etc. And yet in the Congress, there's a little hope now we may have a highway bill. We lurch from year to year with extensions of the old bill. Look, if there's anything that's vital, and I think, to the economy of the state of Arizona, is an upgrade of our infrastructure. So I'm not only not opposed to it, I'm proud that President Eisenhower put together the first highway system that has made America so benefited financially because of it. And the greatest thing that could happen to Arizona is a highway that goes from the Mexico-Arizona border all the way to Canada. That's my dream.
John McCain, the sports fan, obviously you go and watch as many different sporting events as you possibly can. So years from now, the plate is full with going to as many sporting events as are out there.
Yes, I am perhaps the classic mediocre high school and college athlete that engaged in all sports, so therefore has an incredible appreciation for those with the talents that excel at it. And some of my heroes, frankly, Larry Fitzgerald, Shane Doan, Paul Goldschmidt. We've had some really great athletes and nice guy athletes as well.
Since you've established your sports curriculum vitae and chops, and I don't take this disrespectfully, just everybody wants to know, what is John McCain doing 10 years from now?
John McCain is probably down at the old soldiers' home waiting for someone to come and blow the cavalry charge so I can get into the fight again. My hero is Teddy Roosevelt, and Teddy Roosevelt gave a great speech one time called "The Man in the Arena." I've loved being in the arena.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and Senator McCain, thank you. And just one more parenthetical comment. We're here in a rain delay at the race today. Mm-hmm. You do have the ability to change the weather, like the reputation?
Actually, we're so glad when it rains around here. My predecessor, a guy named Barry Goldwater, once said that in Arizona we have so little water the trees chase the dogs. So we're grateful for any rain we ever get.
Thank you, sir. It was an honor. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
You get a sense on the one hand how meaningless regular sports is when you hear John McCain talk about his theories of sports. On the other hand, it's an obligation to embrace and nurture sports because everybody understands its healing power, its philanthropic power, and the like. John McCain will certainly be missed. Let's talk about some of the big issues coming up this week as well. U.S. Open, U.S. Open, U.S. Open. For tennis fans, it starts this week just up the road from Washington in the U.S. Tennis Center. And also, when you take a look at the global tennis economy, it grew about 1.1% in 2017 to a little over $6 billion. The total value of the U.S. tennis economy threshold, it grew by just 1%, over 1%, crossing that $6 billion threshold for the first time. The data from the Tennis Industry Association's annual economic index created to a value that rates the total worth of the U.S. tennis industry to the overall economy. 2017 index value measured 110, and the highest tennis economic index value was first released in 2008. The $6 billion total value of the tennis economy, circulated by measuring various segments in tennis: participation, facility revenue, program delivery and lesson revenue, equipment sales, professional tours, the whole thing. And despite decreases in recreational tennis participation and sales of tennis equipment to consumers, gains were realized in facility and lesson revenue sponsorships, ad revenue, and otherwise. It led to that over 1% gain in the tennis economy. And in fact, the total U.S. tennis economic index steadily increasing since 2008. And here's the important thing to remember as we head into the U.S. Open. While fewer people may be playing, more are watching, equally as important for the sport's long-term health. Let's remember that the more money generated at the U.S. Open, the better for youth tennis, as much of that money funds the tennis industry's plan for growth. And on its 50th anniversary, the U.S. Open also commemorates the completion of a massive renovation and the opening of the new Armstrong Stadium, complete with that roof. USTA will oversee the $53 million prize money paid out Flushing Meadows this year. The impressive sum, just a fraction of the $600 million 5-year campus overhaul, helping to raise the international profile of the USTA Billie Jean National Tennis Center. Billie Jean King, obviously. The new state-of-the-art Armstrong comprises a 14,000-seat arena, shade, loads of new concessions, and a large terrace and bar overlooking the grounds. The new stadium will also host nighttime matches, compelling TV viewing, especially if it rains. As the New York Times noted, the Open today has become a vast money-making corporate playground and high-end shopping mall. If most major sporting events these days are generally better experienced on television, this one remains a singular joy to attend. A 2-week conference or binge-a-thon for tennis lovers, not the least of which because every meaningful way the renovations have improved the bottom-line experience of watching the matches. Of course, they've also improved the bottom line. And the USTA going to extreme lengths to promote the upcoming U.S. Open, including recent streaming of the first ever tennis match played in space. According to USA Today, the 50th anniversary of the tournament being commemorated as a spectacular 3-week festival with plans to keep the extended profile into the future. The new promotional campaign helped draw attention to the week before the main event, calling it Fan Week, with all activities free and open to the public at the Billie Jean King National Tennis Center and the U.S. Open Experience at Brookfield Place in Manhattan. Traditionally less popular qualifying tournament where lower-ranked players vie for the final 16, now being played up as a not-to-miss tournament before the main event. To keep fans engaged during the actual 3-week push, former champions, 27 men, 23 women, honored in a variety of ways. Anniversary's terrific marketing platforms, you can bet the USTA will hold serve on this one. Well, how about college football? The sport experiencing a dramatic rise in naming rights as the real kickoff at the end of this week. The value of college football naming deals skyrocketed over the last 3 years. The average annual fee now over $1 million, according to John Wall Street. American Airlines started the trend in 2015, agreeing to a 10-year, $41 million pact with the University of Washington at Husky Stadium. United Airlines followed, agreeing to a 16-year deal worth $69 million to put its name on the USC Trojans' LA Coliseum. And in May 17, Kentucky became the first SEC school to add a naming rights sponsor on a football stadium, 12-year, $22 million deal with Kroger. The shifting landscape has programs across the country considering adopting corporate names for their athletic buildings. University of Colorado Chief Revenue Officer Matt Biggers noted his school has explored naming rights sponsorships in the past, but said for the first time there seems to be a universal understanding from administrators and alumni from a cost and revenue standpoint that we have to generate revenue to compete, he says. College football, as we know, in an arms race, and naming rights are just one revenue stream that allows athletic departments to stockpile ammunition. And we really can't get into the college football season without mentioning Urban Meyer, the coach, as we all understand, in both sports and news, suspended for the first 3 games. Gene Smith also been suspended for his poor handling of the domestic abuse accusations against former assistant coach Zach Smith. He's the AD. Board of Trustees handed down the punishment for the 2 men after interviewing more than 40 witnesses, more than 60,000 emails, 10,000 texts, The investigation ultimately found both Smith and Meyer failed to adhere to the precise requirements of their contracts when they concluded that they needed to await a law enforcement determination to file charges before reporting the accusations of Courtney Smith against Zach Smith. And both Meyer and Smith will be able to keep their jobs on the basis they acted in good faith, though they didn't do enough. Moreover, Meyer's decision not to report red flags that college football threshold for action in such cases way too low. That seems to be the national consensus, and it's not getting any better or any different. Mercifully, some say, the NFL preseason is basically over on Thursday, and the league continues to unveil their newest marketing engagements. Sports Business Journal talks about how, for example, concessionaire Aramark rolls out its new beer bikes at 10 select stadiums this year. The bikes, branded as Tour de Taps, will be stocked with beer and able to travel around the stadium to deliver beverages to fans, regardless of their locations. It'll be featured in stadiums Minneapolis, Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay, Houston, Philly, Chicago, Kansas City, Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Baltimore. Probably high beer consumption stadiums. Just guessing. The goal of these portable beer stands is to enhance fan engagement, providing stadium goers with an even more interactive vending experience than ever before. And at the end of the day, it's all about finding new and innovative ways not only to reach fans, but deliver an enjoyable service experience. Now that's what I call rolling with the changes as well as generating some revenue. And then when you think of some other things that the NFL is doing, particularly important on the charitable side as well. The Jaguars leading the way in certain charity, and the Bengals also, Andy Dalton, donating charity money to a Buffalo hospital. Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Andy Dalton and his wife Jordan wanted to find a way to show that their appreciation for newfound fans in Buffalo with the Bengals preseason against the Bills on August 26. Jordan Dalton giving a donation to the pediatric department of the Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center in Buffalo on behalf of the Andy and Jordan Dalton Foundation. The gesture a culmination of a saga that began on December 31st of 17, when Dalton threw a 49-yard touchdown pass to Tyler Boyd on the 4th and 12 with 53 seconds left in the game against the Ravens. The touchdown essentially sealed a 31-27 win for the Bengals and put the Bills in the playoffs for the first time in 17 years. Dalton and the board members of the foundation will be in attendance to present the donation before going to Food and Sport in Buffalo to meet with the Bills fans. Bills fans began making donations, mostly in increments of 17, to the Andy and Jordan Dalton Foundations and to the charities of Tyler Boyd's choice as thanks. The fans raised more than $415,000 for the Andy and Jordan Dalton Foundation, and a spokesman said they're continuing to receive at least one donation every week or two since January. Now, this is the time we normally talk before we leave NFL stuff about the president and tweeting and the involvement with the NFL and the national anthem controversy. And you know what? I'm going to ignore that this week for maybe obvious reasons. If we have to, we'll deal with it next week, but I figure I might do my part, especially with the network saying we're not going to cover the national anthem like they're not in football, in baseball, basketball, and hockey. So rather than spending a lot of time saying we're not going to talk about it, let's just move on. And by the way, we're now into the second week of the FedEx Cup playoffs, but maybe the most important thing about golf is how to cultivate the new experience in golf and how to get the kids more involved. Youth on Course partners with Pinehurst. That's an organization that provides scholarships, paid interns, caddy program, and the like. And they're partnering with the Pinehurst Resort and Country Club. The addition of that club now headlines an impressive stable of U.S. golf courses in the Youth on Course portfolio. Members can take advantage of discounted rates at 34 different courses, including in Golf Week's Best Course You Can Play list. For 40,000 members, 115,000 rounds, 900-plus golf courses all over the country. Youth on Course continues to gain momentum in the golf community, And since 2017, partnerships with state and regional golf associations have increased by 120%, positions the organizations as more than halfway to its goal to providing kids in all 50 states to be involved in this. The Youth on Course scholarship retention rate, by the way, 98%, with 53 students already graduated and an impressive off-course achievement. The biggest issue in golf beyond the FedEx Cup, the match. 18-hole winner-take-all duel, Thanksgiving weekend, part of a $9 million pot up for grabs. Clearly nowhere near the same payday that Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao used to walk away with from Vegas, but the format of the event, traditional match play, although Mickelson confirmed there'll be in-play competitions, closest to the pin, longest drive scattered throughout. The loser gets to tase the winner, or the winner gets to tase the loser at the end of each hole. Oh, no, just kidding. But how about that? Think about it for a minute. The tuner has secured control of the pay-per-view rights with a specific PPV price not yet mentioned. And true to form, the trash talk already started on both sides, and hardcore and golf casual fans anxiously await not the event itself, but the pay-per-view pricing, which may be in many ways even more determinative of who watches than the trash talking around the match itself. We're just going to have to see what happens there. Special Olympics teeing up another aspect of the PGA Tour. United Airlines is the official airline of the PGA Tour, flew 9 top Special Olympics golfers to the Northern Trust for an inside-the-ropes VIP experience with players Rafa Cabello-Breo, James Hahn, and J.J. Spawn. Unified day of play, United aligned its recently expanded relationship with Special Olympics around the United and Special Olympics shared vision of unity that included many social factors and illustrates what the game of golf is all about. Trust and the PGA Tour generate some significant advantages using that peg to move forward in a lot of different ways. Finally, let's talk about something that is fairly interesting as far as what is happening across the pond. We don't get it. We don't understand that in certain ways soccer is important to us, but a lifeblood across the pond. Cristiano Ronaldo did not score a goal in Juventus' first experience in Turin, but the northern Italian city, with its pristine cobble streets, were painted black and white number 7 jerseys in anticipation of the match versus Lazio. 2-0 win for the hosts. In the center plaza, a massive advertisement was painted across the entire facade of a building to celebrate Ronaldo's arrival at Juventus. The ad, put up by Nike and written in Italian, consists of all of CR7's career accomplishments in bold black letters before finally stating in gold print, "Now forget everything and start again." Ronaldo earned man of the match honors for his efforts on the pitch, creating numerous chances and nearly scoring on multiple occasions. And the nearly sold out Allianz Arena, the only section, by the way, not sold out, Lazio fans reserved it. Not too many people there. They got their first glimpse at the special talent that Ronaldo is, though fans will have to wait at least one more week to see Ronaldo net his first goal for the 7-time defending champion. And Serie A has now taken one more step in elevating its brand on par with the EPL and La Liga. The bottom line is, we understand how soccer is important here, but nowhere near how soccer is important across the pond as we enter into the beginning of the NFL season and college football. Well, that's our show for the day. We'd like to thank Dan Martin and Tanner Simpkins for putting this together. And we'd also obviously like to thank all of you for celebrating the memory of John McCain as a statesman and a sports fan. And next week, we focus on the NFL season with some special guests. And we wait for you to enjoy next week and this week when we go Beyond the Scoreboard.